My fiancée used my $80,000 inheritance to build her dream boutique, so I investigated what she was really doing, and what I discovered about her and my cousin turned our entire town upside down. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I thought I knew the woman I was going to marry. Turns out, I didn't know anything at all. Daisy Hollowell had this way of making everything seem like destiny. We met at a coffee shop, where she worked mornings before her marketing classes at the community college. She had these expressive brown eyes that lit up when she talked about her dreams of opening a boutique. Sustainable fashion for real women, she'd say, sketching designs on napkins while I bought her lunch. When my grandmother passed away 18 months into our relationship, leaving me $80,000, Daisy cried with me at the funeral. She held my hand during the will reading, whispering about how proud Grandma would be of our future together. The inheritance felt like a sign, enough money to help the woman I love chase her dreams while we built our life together. I can't take your grandmother's money, Daisy protested when I offered to fund her boutique. But her eyes had already lit up with possibility. It's our money now, I told her, sliding the ring across the dinner table. 2 weeks later, partners and everything, she said yes before I finished asking. Setting up Daisy's garden boutique consumed our next 8 months. Daisy threw herself into market research, vendor meetings and lease negotiations with an intensity that impressed everyone. My cousin Belle Thompson, who worked in real estate, helped us find the perfect storefront on Main Street. Daisy's vision is incredible. Belle told me over coffee, pulling out her tablet to show me floor plans. She's thought of everything: the location, the target demographic, the seasonal buying patterns. This girl's going to make you both rich. Belle had always been the successful one in our family: high-end real estate, designer clothes, networking events every weekend. Having her approve of Daisy felt like validation. When Belle offered to help with business permits and connections, it seemed natural. The money flowed out steadily: $25,000 for lease deposits and renovations, $15,000 for initial inventory, another $12,000 for marketing, website development, and professional photography. By the time we opened in September, we'd spent $62,000. The rest is our safety net, I told Daisy, watching her arrange the grand opening display. For the wedding and emergencies, she kissed my cheek, distracted by a crooked mannequin. Of course, baby, we're being so smart about this. The boutique opened to genuine excitement. Belle had coordinated a social media campaign that brought customers from 3 counties over. Local newspaper coverage, even the mayor showed up for the ribbon cutting, praising Daisy's commitment to sustainable local business. But something felt off during those first weeks. Daisy worked 16-hour days at the shop, often sleeping there to save on gas money. When I suggested moving our wedding date from December to the following spring to let the business establish itself, she agreed too quickly. You're right, she said, not looking up from inventory spreadsheets. Business first, then celebration. The woman who used to plan our future in vivid detail now seemed focused entirely on profit margins and customer acquisition. When I tried to discuss wedding plans, she'd redirect to business concerns. Our conversations became entirely transactional. The register was short $40 yesterday, she'd announced the moment I walked in, and that supplier in Atlanta never returned my call about the fall line. I started bringing dinner to the shop, hoping to reconnect, but Daisy would eat while texting suppliers, barely acknowledging my presence. The intimate partnership I'd imagined was becoming a business arrangement, where I provided funding, and she provided. For what exactly? When I found the credit card statements in November, my chest went cold. 3 different cards I'd never seen before, all showing purchases from fashion wholesalers, marketing companies and equipment suppliers. Total charges $18,000. Daisy, I called her from my kitchen table, paper spread everywhere. We need to talk about these credit card bills. What bills? Her voice carried that distracted tone I'd grown to hate. 3 cards with your name on them, $18,000 in charges, all business expenses. Long pause. Oh, those, Blake, I can explain everything. The shop needed emergency inventory for the holiday season. I was going to pay them off with Black Friday profits. You said we were being careful with money. You said the remaining $18,000 was our safety net. It still is. These are investments, Blake. Black Friday sales will cover everything, trust me. But when I showed up at the boutique that evening, demanding to see the business bank statements, Daisy wasn't there. Belle was behind the counter, looking uncomfortable. Where's Daisy? I asked. Business trip. Vendor meetings in Charlotte. Belle avoided eye contact. Should be back tomorrow. Belle, I need to ask you something. As family, do you think Daisy's being honest about the shop's finances? Belle's expression shifted to something I'd never seen before: pity mixed with irritation. Blake, you know I adore Daisy, but maybe you should focus on supporting her dreams instead of micromanaging every dollar. Successful businesses require risk-taking. That night, I called Daisy 17 times straight to voicemail. When she finally returned my call at 11 p.m., her explanation felt rehearsed. I'm building something amazing for us, Blake, but if you don't trust me, maybe we need to reconsider this partnership. The threat worked. I apologized for doubting her. December brought the holiday shopping rush Belle had promised. The boutique bustled with customers. Daisy's Instagram posts showed constant activity, and the local paper featured a small business success story article about her entrepreneurial vision. But the financial picture didn't match the success narrative. When Daisy finally showed me the business account in January, the balance was $4,000. After 3 months of operation during the busiest shopping season, we'd barely broken even. Retail is tough the first year, Elle explained when I expressed concern. Daisy's building a customer base, think long term. I wanted to believe it, but late-night anxiety had me researching small business finances online, and nothing added up. Successful boutiques during holiday season should show significant profit, not barely break even. One evening in February, while Daisy worked late at the shop, I decided to drive by and surprise her with coffee. The storefront was dark. I called her phone. It rang inside the locked building, but Daisy's car wasn't in the parking lot. Where was she? I sat in my car for 2 hours. At 11:30, Daisy's Honda pulled up behind the building. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before got out of the passenger seat, kissed her goodnight, and walked to his own car, one with out-of-state plates. My hands shook as I called her phone. It rang inside the boutique, but she was still in her car, texting. When she finally answered my call an hour later, claiming she'd been doing inventory alone. I felt something fundamental shift. The woman I'd planned to marry was lying to my face. The next morning, I confronted Daisy with what I'd seen. She had explanations for everything. That was Marcus, the vendor from Charlotte. He drove up to discuss our summer line. We had dinner to go over contracts. Why didn't you mention meeting with a vendor? Because you've been so stressed about money. I didn't want to worry you about business meetings. And why did he kiss you? He kissed my cheek. Blake, Europeans do that. It's a cultural greeting. Her explanation sounded reasonable, but my gut screamed warnings. I started paying closer attention. Daisy's phone habits changed. She took calls in the bathroom, kept her screen face down during conversations, and became defensive when I asked about her day. When I mentioned my concerns to Belle, hoping for family support, her response surprised me. Blake, I think you're letting anxiety sabotage your relationship. Belle said over lunch, Daisy's working incredibly hard to build something beautiful. Maybe instead of spying on her, you should appreciate what she's accomplished. I'm not spying. I'm trying to understand why our finances don't match our success stories. Because business is complicated. Profit margins, seasonal fluctuations, reinvestment strategies, these aren't things you learn from Googling small business finances at midnight. Belle's dismissal stung because it contained truth. I didn't understand retail business. Maybe I was letting insecurity drive suspicion. But that weekend, while Daisy claimed to be reorganizing inventory, I drove by the boutique and found it locked, empty and dark. Her car was nowhere to be seen. This time, I followed my instincts and called her immediately. I'm at Belle's house, she said. We're planning the spring marketing campaign. I drove to Belle's. Both their cars were in the driveway, lights on in the living room. When I knocked, Belle answered in pajamas. Blake, what are you doing here? Is Daisy here? She said you were working on marketing plans. Belle's expression flickered just for a second before she stepped aside. Of course, we're in the kitchen. Daisy sat at Belle's table, laptop open, papers spread around her. Everything looked exactly as she'd described, but something felt staged, like walking onto a theater set between scenes. Surprise visit. Daisy smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I apologized for interrupting and left, but that staged feeling haunted me. The papers on Belle's table had been blank. The laptop screen showed a generic website, not marketing materials, and Belle's initial surprise had seemed genuine, like she hadn't expected to see me because she hadn't expected me to look for Daisy. They were covering for each other. But covering what? March brought warmer weather, and a horrible realization: our joint savings account was empty. The $18,000 safety net had vanished, withdrawn in small amounts over 6 weeks. Daisy, I said, holding the bank statement with shaking hands, where's our money? Spring inventory. I told you about the advance orders for summer merchandise. You withdrew $18,000 without discussing it. Blake, we're partners. The boutique is our future. Sometimes I need to make fast decisions to capitalize on opportunities. What opportunities? The shop barely broke even during Christmas season. Her expression hardened. If you don't trust me to run our business, maybe you should take over completely. See how well you do managing inventory, customer service, marketing, and vendor relationships, while your partner questions every decision. Again, the threat of withdrawal. Again, I backed down. But that night, I made a decision that changed everything. I was going to find out exactly what Daisy was doing with our money. I started with social media. Daisy's Instagram showed constant boutique updates, but Marcus, the vendor from Charlotte, appeared in more photos than seemed professional. Dinner photos from restaurants I couldn't afford, weekend trips to cities where she claimed to be buying inventory. His Instagram told a different story. Marcus owned a marketing consulting firm, not a fashion wholesaler. His bio listed Charlotte. A recent post showed him in our town frequently. Photos of local restaurants, hiking trails, and most damning, the view from what looked like Belle's back deck. I screenshotsed everything. Next, I researched the boutique's vendor relationships. The companies Daisy claimed to buy from had no record of working with her. Phone calls to 3 different wholesalers confirmed they'd never heard of Daisy's garden boutique. If she wasn't buying inventory from legitimate vendors, where was the money going? I spent a week building a timeline. Every withdrawal from our account matched with either a social media post featuring Marcus or a business trip Daisy claimed to take. The pattern was undeniable. She was funding a relationship with another man, using my grandmother's inheritance. Armed with evidence, I decided to confront Belle first. She was family, and she'd been involved in the business setup from the beginning. If anyone could help me understand what was happening, it should be her. Belle, I need to show you something, I said, meeting her for coffee with a folder full of screenshots and bank records. I think Daisy's having an affair. Belle's reaction was immediate and angry. Blake, that's a terrible accusation. Daisy loves you. Look at these photos, this timeline, the money transfers that match her trips to see this Marcus guy. Belle flipped through the evidence, her expression shifting from anger to something I couldn't identify. This looks like you've been stalking her social media and building conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories, Belle. Look at the bank records. $18,000 withdrawn to fund trips with another man. Business trips, vendor meetings, professional relationships that you're twisting into something ugly because you're insecure. Belle's vehemence surprised me. She wasn't just dismissing my concerns, she was actively defending Daisy against evidence. Why are you so invested in protecting her? I asked. Because she's good for you, Blake. She's ambitious, creative, and building something real. You're sabotaging the best relationship you've ever had because you can't handle dating someone more successful than you. That accusation hit like a physical blow. This isn't about success, it's about honesty, about using my money to fund a relationship with another man. Your money? Belle's voice turned cold. Since when do engaged couples keep separate accounts? Since when does the man who proposed with partners and everything start auditing his fiancée's business decisions? The conversation ended badly. Belle left the coffee shop, taking my evidence folder with her. 2 hours later, Daisy called. Blake, we need to talk. Belle told me about your own investigation. That evening, Daisy arrived at my apartment with tears in her eyes and a speech that sounded practiced. I can't marry someone who doesn't trust me, she said. Belle showed me those screenshots, those timelines you built. That's not love, Blake. That's obsession. I was trying to understand. No, you were trying to control. To find evidence that I'm not worthy of your precious inheritance money. That's not I can't do this anymore. The boutique, the pressure, the constant suspicion. I need space to figure out who I am without someone monitoring my every move. She left that night, taking her engagement ring and my heart, but she didn't take the boutique key. For 2 weeks, I lived in a fog of second-guessing. Maybe Belle was right. Maybe I'd destroyed a good relationship through paranoid jealousy. Maybe Daisy really was just building a business while I built conspiracy theories. Then I remembered the key. If Daisy had truly left to escape my suspicion, she would have returned the boutique key. The fact that she kept it suggested she planned to continue operating the business, which meant she expected to continue accessing our joint funding. I decided to visit the boutique during hours when it should be open, just to see if she was maintaining normal operations. The storefront was dark at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. The open sign hung crooked, and dust had gathered on the window display. I used my spare key to enter. Inside, the boutique looked abandoned. Inventory was scattered randomly. Price tags were missing from most items, and the register sat open and empty. The back office was worse, papers scattered everywhere, unpaid bills stacked on the desk, and a laptop with a cracked screen. But in the desk drawer, I found something that changed everything. A folder labeled B. See investment records. Inside were detailed financial projections, not for a boutique, but for a marketing consulting firm, Marcus's firm. The documents showed my $80,000 inheritance being used as startup capital for expanding his business into our region. There were partnership agreements between Marcus Marketing and Belle Thompson Properties, profit-sharing contracts, and most damning of all, a romantic relationship disclosure form for business partnerships. Daisy and Marcus weren't having an affair behind a failing boutique. They were using my money to fund his business expansion, while Belle provided local real estate connections. The boutique was a front operation, designed to siphon money from me, while they built a legitimate business together. I photographed everything with solid evidence of fraud. I went to the police. Detective Sarah Morrison listened to my story, reviewed my documentation, and delivered devastating news. Mr. Carter, I understand your frustration, but this appears to be a civil matter, not criminal fraud. How is this not fraud? They used my money to fund a different business than what they claimed. Your fiancé had access to your joint accounts. The withdrawals were technically legal, and while the business plan may have changed, there's no evidence of intent to permanently deprive you of funds. She abandoned the boutique and disappeared with another man. She left after a relationship dispute. That's not theft, it's a breakup. Detective Morrison was sympathetic but clear. Without evidence of criminal intent or identity theft, the police couldn't pursue fraud charges. I would need to pursue civil litigation to recover funds. I left the police station feeling defeated. The legal system couldn't help me, and civil court would take years. All my money continued funding Marcus and Daisy's life together. But walking to my car, I realized something important. Detective Morrison had said there was no evidence of intent to permanently deprive me of funds. That meant if I could prove this deception from the beginning, the situation might change. I needed to find evidence of premeditation. If this had been planned from the beginning, there would be communications, text messages, emails, planning documents. The kind of evidence that people assume gets deleted, but actually lives forever in digital archives. I started with Marcus' business records. His marketing firm's website listed recent projects, client testimonials, and expansion plans that matched exactly with the documents I'd found on Daisy's desk. The timeline showed he's been planning regional expansion for over a year, which meant he's been looking for funding long before Daisy met me. Then I found the Smoking Gun, a local business journal article from 2 years ago, featuring Belle Thompson as rising star in real estate development. The article mentioned her partnership with innovative out-of-state marketing firms and included a photo of Belle at a networking event. Standing next to her in the photo was Marcus Chen. They'd known each other for at least 2 years, which meant when Belle happened to meet Daisy at the coffee shop where I was having lunch, it wasn't coincidence. When Belle offered to help find the perfect storefront, it wasn't family generosity. When Belle promoted Daisy's business vision to me, it wasn't innocent enthusiasm. Belle had recruited Daisy to target me specifically. I needed more proof. If Belle and Marcus had known each other for 2 years, there would be business records, correspondence, something that proved their existing relationship. When Belle introduced herself as someone just meeting Daisy, I spent the next week researching property records, business registrations, and professional licensing databases. Marcus Chen Marketing had been registered in our county 18 months ago, right around the time Daisy and I started getting serious. The business address was listed as Belle Thompson's office. The timeline was devastating. Marcus moved his business to our area. Elle identified me as a potential funding source through family knowledge of my inheritance, and Daisy was recruited to seduce me into providing startup capital. Every moment of our relationship had been a lie. Armed with evidence of the conspiracy, I decided to confront all 3 of them publicly. If they'd used community connections to legitimize their fraud, I would use the same community to expose it. The monthly Chamber of Commerce mixer seemed perfect. Elle attended regularly. Marcus had been networking locally, and their business relationships were built on community credibility. I prepared a presentation showing the timeline, the financial records, and the evidence of premeditation. The confrontation was a disaster. Standing before 50 local business owners, I presented my case: the timeline of Marcus and Belle's prior relationship, the fake boutique used to siphon inheritance money, the conspiracy to defraud me of my grandmother's legacy. But instead of community outrage, I faced skepticism and disapproval. Blake, said Janet Harrison, who owned the local bookstore, "This sounds like a man who can't accept that his relationship ended." "You're accusing Belle Thompson of conspiracy," added Mike Rodriguez from the hardware store. "Belle's helped half the businesses in town with real estate deals. She's got a spotless reputation." Marcus himself stood up to respond. "I understand Blake's heard about his breakup with Daisy, but business partnerships evolve. My firm works with local businesses to expand their marketing reach. That's not fraud, it's economic development." The room murmured agreement. Several people looked at me with pity. The scorned ex-fiancé making wild accusations because he couldn't handle rejection. Elle's response was the final blow. "Blake is family, and I love him, but grief affects people differently. He's been struggling since his grandmother passed, and I think he's looking for someone to blame for his pain. The meeting ended with awkward handshakes and sympathetic looks. Nobody believed me. Worse, I'd cemented my reputation as the unstable ex-boyfriend, making desperate accusations against respected community members. Walking to my car, I heard whispered conversations behind me always seemed a little odd. Diz is better off without him. Belle's been nothing but helpful to everyone. I'd played my strongest hand and lost completely. That night, sitting in my empty apartment, with a bottle of wine and a bruised ego, I realized my fundamental mistake. I'd been trying to convince people that Belle, Marcus, and Daisy were criminals. But they weren't criminals, they were opportunists who'd identified legal ways to manipulate someone's emotions for financial gain. The community wouldn't care about sophisticated manipulation, but they would care about results. Instead of proving conspiracy, I needed to prove failure. Instead of showing their planning, I needed to show their waste. Instead of making them look evil, I needed to make them look incompetent. I went back to the evidence with new focus. Not the timeline of deception, but the timeline of financial mismanagement. The boutique had received $80,000 in funding and generated less than $15,000 in revenue over 6 months. That was an 81% loss rate, spectacularly bad for any business. Marcus' marketing firm had received most of my money but had no measurable local success stories. Despite 18 months in our area, he'd failed to build a significant client base. Belle had connected them with prime real estate and community introductions. But both ventures were failing. I built a new presentation focused on business failure, not personal betrayal, and I found the perfect audience: the Small Business Association meeting where Belle had originally promoted Daisy's boutique as a success story. 6 months ago, Belle Thompson introduced this community to what she called the future of local retail. I began, showing the newspaper article featuring Daisy's boutique opening. Tonight, I want to share the actual results of that business. I presented clean financial data. Investment $80,000, revenue $14,800, a loss rate 81%. Timeline abandoned after 6 months. I'm not here to discuss personal relationships, I continued. I'm here because small business funding is precious in our community. When someone invests their inheritance, their family's legacy in local business, we should expect professional results. The room listened carefully as I showed Marcus's client list, nearly empty, despite 18 months of operation, the boutique's inventory management chaotic and unprofessional, and the business plan discrepancies. Funding a marketing firm while claiming to run a boutique. Belle Thompson connected investors with entrepreneurs who had impressive presentations but no track record. Marcus Chen took local funding and produced no measurable value for our business community. Daisy Hollowell abandoned her business after 6 months, leaving unpaid debts and disappointed customers. I ended with community impact. 3 local suppliers are still waiting for payment from the boutique. 2 customers are fighting credit card charges for orders that were never delivered. And 1 local family lost their grandmother's inheritance, funding businesses that never intended to succeed. This time, the room responded differently. These were business owners who understood profit margins, customer service, and professional accountability. They could see the failure patterns clearly. Janet Harrison, who'd defended Belle at the chamber mixer, raised her hand. Blake, did Belle receive any compensation for connecting these businesses? Yes. Marcus' business registration lists Belle as a paid consultant. She received finder's fees for investment connections. The room murmured with new interest. Belle hadn't just recommended bad businesses, she's profited from the connections. Mike Rodriguez asked, what about the other investors? Were other people funding these businesses? As far as I can determine, my inheritance was the primary funding source, which raises questions about why experienced business consultants couldn't attract investment from professional sources. That comment landed hard. Professional investors avoid businesses like these. Belle, Marcus, and Daisy had targeted emotional investors, people whose judgment might be compromised by personal relationships. After my presentation, several business owners approached me privately. 2 had been considering hiring Marcus for marketing services, but decided against it after seeing his lack of local success. 1 had been thinking about listing property with Belle, but wanted to research her other client outcomes first. Word spreads quickly in small business communities. Over the next 2 weeks, Belle's reputation crumbled as people started asking questions. Her other business deals came under scrutiny, not legal investigation, but practical evaluation. How many of her innovative partnerships actually produced results for local businesses? The pattern was consistent: impressive presentations, community connections, and underwhelming outcomes. Elle specialized in bringing outsiders to town with impressive credentials and local introductions, but she didn't follow up on results. Marcus's business started failing as potential clients chose local competitors. When your business model depends on community trust, and the community stops trusting, you stop getting clients. Daisy became a cautionary tale among local entrepreneurs. Her social media presence, once praised for innovation, now looked unprofessional compared to businesses that actually served customers consistently. But the real breakthrough came when Janet Harrison approached me at the grocery store. Blake, I owe you an apology. After your presentation, I looked into some of Belle's other recommendations. Remember that catering company she brought in last year? They lasted 4 months and stiffed 3 suppliers, and the consulting firm before Marcus took deposits for services they never delivered. How many others? I asked. At least 6 businesses in the past 3 years, all outsiders Belle introduced as innovative partners, all failures that cost local people money. Janet had done what I caught, and she'd researched Belle's track record comprehensively. The pattern was undeniable. Belle made money connecting local investors with failing businesses. There's more, Janet continued. Mike Rodriguez called the Better Business Bureau. Marcus' firm has complaints in Charlotte and Asheville for undelivered services. He's been moving from town to town, using local connections to get contracts, then disappearing when clients demand results. The conspiracy was bigger than my relationship. Belle and Marcus had been running a systematic con, targeting small communities with limited business networks. They'd done it before, and they'd planned to do it again. The legal system couldn't prosecute them for fraud, but the business community could hold them accountable through market forces. Within a month, Marcus's firm lost its remaining clients and closed. Del's real estate business didn't disappear, but her reputation for innovative partnerships ended completely. Daisy tried to return in April, showing up at my apartment with tears, apologies, and explanations about being manipulated by sophisticated criminals. She claimed Belle had recruited her specifically to target me, that she's been a victim too. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. I thought Marcus was legitimate. I thought the boutique could really work. Maybe that was true. Maybe Daisy had been recruited and manipulated. But she'd also chosen to lie to me for months, steal my inheritance, and abandon our relationship when confronted with evidence. I hope you find what you're looking for, I told her. But you won't find it with me. She left town the following week. Belle tried a different approach: family guilt. She showed up at family gatherings, talking about forgiveness, misunderstandings, and the importance of family bonds. My parents encouraged reconciliation, not understanding the full scope of what had happened. Belle made some poor business decisions. But she's still family, my mother said. I showed my parents the evidence I'd presented to the business community. They were horrified not just by the financial loss, but by the calculated nature of the targeting. She used family knowledge to identify you as a victim. My father said, reading through the timeline, she knew about the inheritance from grandmother's funeral. She knew you'd been talking about marriage. Elle's family status couldn't survive that realization. The financial loss was permanent: $80,000 gone forever. But the community support was real. Local businesses started referring customers to me for the freelance web design work I'd been doing part-time. People who'd seen me fight for accountability trusted me with their professional needs. 6 months later, I had enough clients to quit my day job and start my own design business. Not the future I'd planned with Daisy, but a future built on genuine community relationships rather than deception. It's been 18 months since Daisy left. The boutique storefront now houses a successful bakery run by a couple who moved here from Ohio, legitimate entrepreneurs with professional experience and community investment. Marcus never returned. Belle still lives in town but keeps a much lower profile. She focuses on residential real estate rather than business partnerships, and her reputation has recovered somewhat, though people remember. I learned something important about community dynamics: people will forgive almost anything if you're honest about mistakes and committed to doing better. But they won't forgive calculated deception, especially when it targets vulnerable people. My inheritance is gone, but the lesson was worth the cost. I learned to trust evidence over explanations, actions over promises, and community judgment over individual charisma. Most importantly, I learned that real partnerships, business or personal, are built on shared investment and mutual accountability. If someone wants to build a future with you, they'll welcome your questions, include you in decisions, and prioritize transparency over control. When I meet someone new now, I pay attention to how they handle money, how they treat service workers, and how they respond when their version of events is questioned. Character shows up in small moments, not grand gestures. The woman I'll marry someday will want me to understand her dreams, not just fund them. She'll see my questions as care, not criticism, and she'll never make me choose between trusting her and trusting my own judgment. That woman is worth waiting for. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.